Are lichens harmful to azaleas? Is GrassGter safe to use on Vinka ground cover? And how long does Kickstart last while it's in the bottle? I've got answers to these questions and more coming up on Garden Sense. Hey everybody, I'm Tim Ward and welcome back to Garden Sense. Folks, I got probably 100 emails last week and virtually every single one was dealing with how to maintain specific plants in your gardens. So we actually selected 5 questions that are all going to deal with your gardens. So buckle up everybody, let's jump right in. The first question is from Ed. Tim, when should Plant Trust and Kickstart be applied to a flower garden? It would be helpful if you also included in the Rosen's calendar when Plant Trust and Kickstart should be applied to a flower garden. Okay, so for starters, do not put Plant Trust in your flower garden. Now, it's not going to hurt the flowers, but it's not the ideal nutrition profile. Plant Trust is really designed for trees, shrubs, for keeping plants green. Garden Trust, which is what you want to use, is designed for producing more blooms, brighter blooms, bigger blooms, and so Garden Trust is what you want to be using in your flower garden. In terms of when to apply it, the general rule is just going to be any time during the spring is going to be fine, but I'll be honest with you, there's a little bit of variance to it depending on what type of plants you have. Are you planting new? So again, is it a perennial garden or is it an annual garden? You know, if you're putting in new plants, you don't need to put down Garden Trust until those new plants are in. So again, I'll tell people it can be anywhere from early spring to late spring, frankly, even early summer, depending on what plants that you have in your flower garden. But again, springtime is a safe bet for just about any of the flowering plants. In terms of Kickstart's incredibly versatile and you can start putting that down as long as the ground is not frozen. So in the very early spring, possibly even late winter, depending on where you live, and you can continue to use it weekly, monthly, all the way up until it starts to get cold and that ground will start to freeze again. So again, it's an incredibly versatile product. We have people who put it down once a week. We have people who use it on all other plants once a month. So it's a little bit subjective in terms of how you want to use it. It's an organic product. So again, short of putting it down daily, which is really overkill, you're not going to hurt the plants, whether they're flowers, trees, shrubs, your potted plants. So again, use it in terms of feeding your plants or use it as a root strengthener. But again, I don't recommend more than once a week for it. Now, you also asked why don't we have a calendar specifically for gardens? Well, some of it goes back to what I just said a little bit ago. It's very subjective. Without knowing exactly what type of plants you have in your garden, it's really difficult for me to tell you exactly when to fertilize with Plant Trust or Garden Trust, when to utilize Kickstart, because again, do you have more trees? Do you have more shrubs? Do you have more flowers? Again, is it an annual garden? Is it a perennial garden? All of those pieces of information matter in terms of when it's best to fertilize. And frankly, there's such a breadth of products that could be used, but more importantly, there's a breadth of plants that could be put in that garden. So that's really why we haven't put down a formal garden calendar like we've done with the Rosen's lawn calendar. But again, going back to your original question, forget Plant Trust, put down Garden Trust now. You can put it anytime in the springtime, you're going to be safe. And then again, you can start using Kickstart now, but ideally you're going to use it as soon as that ground thaws, and you can continue to use it up until the ground freezes again later this fall. Question number 2 is from Lou. Hi Tim, are lichens harmful to azaleas? How do I get rid of it? So lichens are a very unique organism in the sense that they are basically a symbiotic partnership between a fungus and a type of algae. Now, if I tell you that your plants have a fungus and or an algae growing on it, you're thinking that's really, really bad. We need to put down something to clear it up. Here's the thing, lichens are completely harmless to all plants and they are found everywhere. They can grow on rocks, they can grow on logs, they can grow on plants. Obviously they grow on azaleas. You'll find them on trees. They're everywhere across the world and there is no negative impact on the plant. What's interesting about lichens is they are used worldwide for producing things like deodorant, toothpaste. They're actually very, very useful in a lot of things. But again, I understand when you see the picture that you sent in, you're like, oh man, this is bad. Something's going on with my azaleas. Your azaleas are just fine. And the lichens are going to stay there probably forever unless there's a significant environmental change. A lot of times, if there's exposure to a lot of sunlight or it becomes really dry, the lichens may die off. But in terms of a chemical control, there's nothing out there that's going to actually quote unquote kill it. But again, it's not harming anything, and it actually can add a little bit of sophistication to your plants. In fact, that's what a lot of professional botanists, if you've ever gone to a botanical garden, they often talk about lichens and the fact that it makes it look like it's an old forest, an old garden, that type of a thing. So in some cases, they're desirable simply because of their appearance. Now, you may just want them gone, and that's okay. It's your azalea. You can do what you want. In terms of how to safely remove it, because it's not a chemical issue, you're actually going to want to get like a bucket of warm water and a rag and see if you can't actually scrape it off. Depending on the variety of the lichen, it may come off. If that doesn't happen, what you need to get is something that's hard but not too hard. So like maybe like a plastic knife or a plastic trowel, something like that, where you can gently scrape it off. Again, you don't want to get down too deep because, again, you could harm the plant. You don't want to damage the bark. But again, those lichens are not feeding off of your azaleas. They're not burrowing into the bark. They're just resting right on top of the bark. So in some cases, you can scrape them off. But if you can't, you've tried to scrape them gently. You've tried to wipe them off with some warm water and a rag. Don't worry about it. They're going to be there probably until the plant dies. And again, they are not causing any harm to the plant whatsoever. The third question is from Jim. Good morning, Tim. I have a Vinka ground cover and was wondering if there is a product that would selectively kill the grasses that are starting to show up on my ground cover. I have heard you talk about GrassGter on past shows. Is that the right product to use, and is it safe for the Vinka? So if you look at the GrassGter label, you will see that Vinka does not show up on the list of plants that are safe from GrassGter. However, Vinka has another more common name, and that's periwinkle. And periwinkle is listed on GrassGter's safe plants list. And so yes, absolutely. Again, I don't know what type of grasses you have growing up, and GrassGter does not necessarily kill 100% of grasses and grassy weeds, but it kills a lot of them. So you can safely put down GrassGter on your Vinka. You should start to see results, within 5 to 7 days. Most of that grass should be gone. The fourth question is from Matt. Tim, on 2/26, I pruned my 8 knockout roses, fertilized them with Garden Trust 15-15-15, and also applied Kickstart. They all look fantastic. I live in Maryland. I heard that these roses should be fertilized 4 times a year. Is that true? When should I fertilize them again? So in terms of feeding your knockout roses 4 times a year, you can do that, but it depends 100% on the type of fertilizer that you use. If you are using a low dose, organic fertilizer, then yeah, feeding it 4 times is not going to be a problem. However, you chose Garden Trust, which tells me that you care about the long-term health and the beauty that your knockout roses have. So putting it down on February 26th, like you explained in your email, means that you can put down a second application relatively soon of Garden Trust. But that would be it. Folks, Garden Trust was going to last up to 3 months, okay? It lasts an entire season because it's a slow release fertilizer, which means it's going to slowly and gently feed the knockout roses over the course of 90 to 100 days. So again, you've already used it once. You can definitely use it again real soon, but do not use Garden Trust anymore. And the reason for that is really once mid-late summer hits, you do not want any additional blooms to start popping up. You definitely don't want new growth. And the reason for that is that the plant may not have time to harden off that new growth before the winter sets in. So you fed it in late February, you can feed it again here real soon, and that should, safely feed that rose up through the end of summer. And at that point, you want to cut off any fertilization to make sure that that plant prepares itself properly for the winter. The final question for today is from George. Tim, if you mix up a bottle of Kickstart but do not use it all, how long will it last? So I don't have an exact time frame for how long it can sit on a shelf, if it's in a cool, dry place. I really don't know, because quite honestly, I've never had a bottle of Kickstart last me more than a couple of months, because I will typically fill it up, I'll use it within a couple of weeks, and then I will leave actually the dry, non-concentrate version of Kickstart sitting on the shelf until I'm ready to use it again. So again, if it's that 1 ounce bottle that you've received and you have not added any water to it, keep it in a cool, dry place, and it should frankly last forever. Once you add the water, though, again, I don't know exactly how long, but it's going to be at least a year. Again, it's an organic product, so it's not going to lose any potency or any efficacy within a year. Just make sure, though, that if you do fill it up to make the concentrate and then it sits for a long time, you want to make sure that you shake it up really, really well before you use it. Again, just to make sure that that organic material is mixing really, really well with the water. So I'm sorry I don't have an exact time frame for you, but it's going to be at least a year. And so again, if it's any longer than that, just make sure that you shake it up really, really well before you go ahead and apply it. All right, folks, just a couple final thoughts here before we knock off this video podcast. Folks, as you can tell from all of the questions that we had on this episode, now is the time to really get in your gardens. And again, as a reminder, we have the Spring Garden Special going on right now over at rosensonline.com. Folks, this is going to be 3 bags of Garden Trust, a bag of Plant Trust, a bottle of Kickstart. Everything that your garden needs to really, really thrive can be found in this special. So head over to rosensonline.com and pick up the Spring Garden Special. You're going to save on the product and you're going to be saving on shipping. So hurry in. We're only going to probably run this for another couple of weeks. I'd say probably 2 weeks. And again, with Mother's Day coming up here in a couple of days, if you're planning on getting her flowers or shrubs or trees, anything that might go in her garden, again, even some potted plants, Kickstarts, Garden Trust, Plant Trust, those are the products that you're going to want. So head over to Rosens Online right now. Folks, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. We really do appreciate it, and we really do appreciate all the questions that you send us. So if you have questions, send them to tim@rosensonline.com. They will come right to me, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions. Folks, I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. Ladies, I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day. God bless.